The second week of the World Cup didn't disappoint in any way. It was an action-packed one, and where previously you had the situation if tier two nations played, it was a boring game. None of that happened. It was actually quite spectacular to see these guys play, and there's a clear shift in power. And we're going to look at a couple of these games and a couple of the interesting results that we've seen over the last couple of days. You have to start with the France Uruguay game, not just because it was first, but yeah, it was absolutely spectacular. The positives that France can take from the game is they won. That's where it ends. Literally, that's it. There's nothing else. The rest of the credit all must go to Uruguay. They were beyond spectacular. They were in it with absolutely everything. Put their bodies on the line, wore their hearts on their sleeves. Everything for 80 minutes, non-stop. And that was beautiful to watch. If you really look at the game, the only major mistake that they made was that one exit kick closer towards the end where they kicked against one of their own players, and France got their lucky second try from it. Up until that point, with just about 10 minutes to go, it was 13-12 in favour of France. So it was an exceptionally close game. In the end, the 27-12 final score flattered France way too much if you look at the performance that they put up. What actually capped it all was when the Uruguayan captain, Andrés Vilaseca, pitched up to the post-match press conference, and he was still wearing his jersey, and he still had his tape around his head, and that was blood-stained, and there was still grass stains on it and everything. He just sat down and he started talking with a lot of passion about Uruguayan rugby. You could see the pride that he had in his team, the pride that he had in his country, and not standing back to any of the classic Tier 1 nations. Something that he said was actually very, very relevant, and he mentioned that at the post-match conference, suddenly everybody wanted to talk to him. Everybody wanted to know, what are these Uruguayans all about? But only two of the journalists pitched up to the team announcement earlier this week. So it just goes to show the respect is not there yet for the Tier 2 teams, and that is very, very sad to see. That must stop. Honestly, that must stop from absolutely everybody involved in the World Cup. If a team plays in the World Cup, they earned their spot there. And they deserve all the respect, whether they are number 1 or they're number 16. That doesn't matter. We've seen it at some of the training camps and some of the open trainings, actually, that the local residents, they pitch up in their numbers. The other day, the Namibian Open practice actually had something like 5,000 or 6,000 people there for Namibia, and you would think, okay, but it's just Namibia. No, it's not just Namibia. This is the World Cup. It's the World Cup, and Namibia is playing in the World Cup. So the respect must be given to absolutely every single team there. So journalists, listen and give these guys the respect and the time that they deserve in your publications and online, wherever you're going to post this. The second game between New Zealand and Namibia, the game was one-sided from the start, and Namibia were only really competitive in phases. You could see that during these times, it was a far better side than it was in previous World Cups. And in previous World Cups, it used to just be that they would just fall off completely during game. But here you could see when they were actually in control of the ball, when they were actually playing to their structures, not overawed by the occasion, they would play really constructive rugby. And that is the case with absolutely every single one of the smaller nations. And that is something to be respected, honestly. But let's just turn to the All Blacks for a little while. You could see that the All Blacks started gaining back some of their confidence in the game. There were some great running lines that were being run that you haven't seen for months. And you could really see that the New Zealand side had a little bit of a different dynamic with Damon McKenzie in the mix. Damon McKenzie just makes it so much more enterprising, so much more unpredictable, and a lot of the players would play off him. So I would definitely keep him in that squad. It would be weird not to see him line up in the next matches. So hopefully they realize the situation, play him with Richie Mo'unga, and then that combo I think can be kind of deadly. Mongo at 10, Damien coming from the back, and then linking up in certain phases. I want to see that. Samoa versus Chile game was a good one for Samoa. They opened their World Cup account. It was their first game of the tournament, and they put up a solid performance. It wasn't flawless, and Chile had their moments where they threatened in a good way, and they got the crowd behind them, which I absolutely loved. And that is something that the French crowd has been exceptional about. Whenever there's an underdog on the field, they would support them and they would cheer for them and they would just love the rugby that they're getting to see in their country. As the game wore on, Samoa, however, showed their class. They started putting together some constructive rugby, got past the early tournament jitters, and you could see that there was something to them. There was, however, still quite a few handling errors from the Samoans, which is weird, because literally, if you look at any of the Islander teams, that just doesn't happen. Usually, when they step onto the field, it is spectacular in terms of how they handle the ball, how they carry the ball, and that was always their number one strength. But in this game, that actually let down Samoa a little bit. With this victory, though, they are still in a very solid position. And they've still got a good chance to move on to the quarterfinals, and that we'd love to see. The Wales versus Portugal game was actually a bit of an unexpected one. Wales were good for large parts of the game, not brilliant, but Portugal were actually quite a few levels up from where you would expect them to be. And it was wonderful to hear once again that they had so many players playing in the French professional leagues. Not all in the top 14, mostly in the second tier, but they are playing professional rugby. So there's definitely a shift in terms of the squads and their strengths and how they keep improving. Once again, just echoing what I mentioned earlier, is only thing I didn't like about Portugal is I've never seen a game of them outside of a World Cup. The only things that actually get broadcast around the world are the top tier games, and whoever broadcasts these ones, come on, make a plan. We need to see more of this. I want to see what Portugal does. I want to see what Chile does. I want to see what Uruguay does. Even the guys who didn't make it. I want to see what the US does, what Spain does, what Canada does, Mexico, Brazil. Some of these teams are putting together some pretty spectacular games, and I want to see all of them play. Then you can understand what's going on with World Rugby, and you can see how they evolve. So, but yeah, there's my little rant. So that's out of the way. But let's turn back to Wales just for a second. Wales are actually in a great position to advance past this group stage. They've now got their first two victories under the belt, hard fought, both of them. There are still a couple of bruised and battered players from the Fiji game, but they are in a good position. I think they will go through with Fiji as it stands at the moment. They have Australia coming up, but I'm not so sure that Australia would be able to win against a Wales team that is growing in confidence. The Ireland-Tonga game at times looked like it was going to be a spectacular, but sadly didn't turn out to be what we hoped it would be. And I'm not talking about Ireland. I'm just talking about Tonga in this regard. Tonga has a star-studded team, and it's a team where the only thing that is really lacking is game time against some of these top teams. If they play regularly against some of these top teams in test matches, they would start to understand how they can evolve with the pressure that they need to absorb. They would understand that no, their phases aren't as brilliant as they thought it would be. Their scrums still need a little bit of work. Their liners still need a little bit of work. But if they're only playing against weaker teams, you're never going to see these teams evolve. So something for World Rugby to figure out in the rugby calendars over the coming months and years after the World Cup. At times, however, Tonga were really exciting, and I think we're still going to see quite a few fireworks from them, and I'm really looking forward to seeing exactly what they dish up in this group. There's still going to be a good match for them against South Africa. There's going to be a good match for them against Scotland, and they are going to deliver a world of hurt for the Romanians. So overall, there's some exciting stuff still to come from Tonga in this one. Now, when I get to Ireland, it might sound like I'm the biggest fan in the world, and I'm just a fan of great rugby. And the way that Ireland played this game against a number of superior athletes, and in many of the positions, the Tongan athletes are physically more dominant than the Irish rugby players. But the professionalism that this team plays with is absolutely astounding. At scrum time, they're disciplined. And that is from scrum number one to the very last one. Lineouts, the exact same thing. Runs like clockwork. In the defense, it's effective, and they reset in seconds again and again and again. They don't really have a moment in the game when they go soft. They are constantly getting back in defense and defending again, back in defense and defending again. But they actually also turn it around the other way. When they're attacking, they get their line set again, and they've got attacking options constantly. Uh, at ruck time, however, as well, they don't overcommit in rucks, and that's something that they've been doing for a few years now, where they put the minimal amount of people in the rucks. If they can win the ruck, they actually commit people to it. If they can't win the ruck, you would quickly see them pulling people out of there to help on attack or help on defense. One thing that never makes it onto the highlight reels are the situations where you've got teams getting back into position. And this is something that this Irish team does really well. They get a lot of their results from this because as a team attacks against them, there's always a line waiting for them. As they get the ball, there's always somebody ready to attack. It's very reminiscent of what you saw from the really superior All Black sides about 2-3 years ago, when they were still running rampant with everybody. And the one person that I can say was always the best proponent of that was certain Mr. Richie McCaw. He was exceptionally slow. Literally, this guy was as slow as mud. But when he didn't have the ball, he would cleverly work towards the ball and work himself into position. And he is considered the greatest rugby player by a lot of New Zealanders that they've ever produced. That is a whole different discussion. But yeah, he did the work without the ball pretty effectively. And then when he had the opportunities on the ball, he was there every single time. Now, all of this work and all of this gushing from our side about how beautiful Ireland plays the game is all done with two things that never goes away, and that you have to have a hell of a lot of respect for. So through all of this, I heard the comment from one of the commentators during the game that the Omani yellow card, which I don't think should have been one, but that's fine, as in the past 25 games they've gotten 2 yellow cards. That is ridiculous. So they keep their discipline. That's the first one. They don't get cards. They keep their discipline throughout. The second one is, and this every single rugby team can learn from, is you don't have every single player sharing their opinion with the referee and telling the referee how to ref the game. There's a decision against them. You could see that they're upset. You could see that they're not happy with it. But they don't pipe up and start talking and moaning about it. They get back into position, get on with it. Only the captain talking. And those two traits are brilliant. After seeing the way that Ireland conducted themselves in this game, yep, they deserve to be on top of the world rankings at the moment. South Africa versus Romania, it was just a one-sided affair. The South Africans ran rampant, and after 11 minutes they were 26-0 up. The one thing that wasn't too positive for them is that they had only scored one more try from that 11th minute till halftime. It wasn't massive defense from Romania. It was decent at times, but the South Africans let themselves down with a lot of handling errors. The second half, however, they piled it on, and in the end, they came away with an easy victory with 2 hat-tricks actually by the team. The Australia versus Fiji game, definitely game of the weekend. It was beautiful to watch. The Australians knew they were up against it physically, and you have to give them a little credit for the way that they actually scored that first try. They knew that they were up against a number of physical, massive athletes, so they had to be cunning about how they actually got their points on the day. They were able to do that pretty well with that 50-22, where they played quickly and they got the score in the corner. For a long time, that was the only points that they had gotten, and Fiji started working themselves back into the game. But this was a whole different Fiji. They got themselves into scoring positions, and they just had the kicks sailing over one after the other. That was something that you're not used to seeing from a Fijian side. You would just expect the running. But this is a new level of Fijian rugby. The part that really stood out to me, however, was that right at the end, when they had the game in the bag, they had the presence of mind not just to be excited about the victory, tap the ball and kick it out, is they actually wanted to take away the bonus losing point from the Australians by taking that kick at goal. So that tells you there's a whole new level of comfort and confidence in this team, and that is something that will become very dangerous if they keep building on this. England versus Japan was one that went with a result that people would have expected traditionally from it, but it was also for a fairly long time not so certain that England would actually win this one. Uh, it was probably still around the 60th minute that there was only a point in it, and then England really started turning the screws. They started playing constructive rugby. They actually got into their stride. And as much as it pains me to say, they played well. They were able to put phases together. They were at the rucks very quickly. Uh, they took their opportunities pretty well. You had some hard running, and you had um, some really impressive work from a couple of players that actually came on as substitutes in that game. So one of the most impactful subs was actually from Joe Merchant, and he was actually pretty impressive. He set up a lot of the momentum that the team got, and he deserved that try at the death. One of the other standouts for me was definitely Courtney Lawes. He usually doesn't get the majority of the credit that he should in the game, but I rate him as an exceptional flanker. And he, on the day, put together an innings that was worthy, uh, in my opinion, probably of being the man of the match. He was brilliant in all aspects. So then, lastly, let's get to the things that really stood out over this past weekend of rugby at the World Cup. Something that still was very prominent is how cards actually played a big role in this game. I can clearly see that there's a big push from World Rugby to try and force players to be very cognizant of their contact with other players' heads and trying to take some of those dangerous aspects out of the game. Honestly, it's the right idea, but it still needs to be streamlined a little bit in terms of how it gets officiated. Something that would be interesting to see is exactly how the stats have changed or haven't changed after a couple of months in terms of concussions and any other head injuries. Previous big changes to the laws was when it was related to the scrums and how people would engage, and that actually also turned the numbers around in a positive way. So if this takes it another step further in terms of player safety, brilliant, do it. But hopefully they just work out the kicks, because there's a few decisions that were still a little bit dodgy in my opinion. Second thing, and this is the most exciting one of the lot, is the times of having 6 or 8 teams in the World Cup that you would consider top teams, and then the others just making up the numbers. That is coming to an end. It's coming to an end fairly quickly. All credit to World Rugby for the effort that they've put in to help the second tier nations, or what they now call the performance nations, to really start evolving the game and evolving their squads. Alistair Coetzee just had a good thing to say about it. He said they must just intervene a little earlier. If they do it a year out, there's not enough time to actually really start building up a squad and building up the structures that you need to really be competitive. But with a short amount of time, if you see how a lot of these teams competed, you would think, okay, it's not too far off. This is really going to help the game to grow globally. And I'm really looking forward to the 2027 and the 2031 editions of the World Cup, where I don't think it's going to be a shocker if you see a number 3 team perhaps losing to a number 19 team. It's going to be something that would become more normal and would just give a whole new dimension to the whole tournament. As if I haven't gushed enough about Ireland, they were just a class act. The way that they actually conducted themselves is something that absolutely every single team in this tournament can learn from. Watching Ireland play is a joy. Yes, I've previously mentioned that sometimes they play what is considered boring rugby, and I think that was misunderstood. What I meant with boring rugby is a lot of the things that they do isn't just a human highlight reel. It isn't what you used to see from previous All Black sides, where it was just offloads everywhere and ridiculous running the whole time. As they build constructively, but those phases are something beautiful for me to watch. That hard work that they put in all facets of the game, is something that is absolutely spectacular. So Whenever a team does it like that, I might refer to it as boring. I don't mean it's boring, boring to watch. It's just boring in some people's minds. But then, just getting to our two biggest winners on of this past week, that would be Fiji and Uruguay, in my opinion. Yes, Uruguay lost, but they were always considered one of the historically smaller teams, and they clearly showed. All of these teams need to be respected in exactly the same way as the bigger teams are. I talked about them a little earlier, and they played with a passion. They actually put France to the sword, and it was very close up until those last 10 minutes. Uh, just didn't pull it off. And once again, their captain, Andrés Vilaseca, go and watch some of those interviews, those post match interviews. You will see what we're talking about. Fiji, however, definitely the biggest winners on the weekend. They beat Australia for the first time in 69 years, and you could see the joy on those Fijians' faces. It was very hard fought. But the most dangerous thing that I think came from this game was that they went from the Wales heartbreak to this game, picked up the victory, and the only thing that is happening now is you have this very dangerous team growing in confidence. With them growing in confidence, everybody should be worried. And I think they're likely to get to the quarterfinals. If they get to the quarterfinals, I'm not going to be shocked to see them in the semifinals. And that would be one of the most well deserved semifinal spots in this tournament.